Indira, welcome back, and again, thank you for coming on the air today.
Thank you, Michael.
Let's go to let's start here first of all. What is the significance of Planegate in the bigger picture?
Planegate was basically Valerie Plame, wife of Joe Wilson, ambassador to Niger, was a CIA operative, and her outing by Cheney, Rove, and company destroyed a global WMD weapons of mass destruction search team, a global one.
Yeah.
These are the good guys that would catch terrorists who may have weapons that we don't want them to have, such as neutron bombs.
Right.
Now, this was strategically masterminded at a very high level. The same names come up, and again, the significance in my mind, the most important part is that it brilliantly shows the pattern of the Bush, what for lack of a better word, the Bush crime family cabal the last 50 years. Their pattern of conspiracy, collusion, and cover-up utilize the same core set of patterns, the same high-level operatives, we think 50 to 200 at different levels, old and new organizations, and political foot soldiers, but at the highest level, we see Michael Ledeen, an Iran-Contra op. I think the tactical direction was by Karl Rove, and foot soldiers even include Ledeen's daughter Simone. The reason this is kind of interesting because it ties back to earlier shows. The publicity, the actual outlet that outed it was none other than Jeff Gannon's, the White House male prostitute, Talon News Agency, which was funded by Bobby Eberly of GOP USA. And, his Leadership Institute gave Gannon his land speed record 2-day journalism degree. They stuck him in the White House, and one of his sterling tasks was to publicize the outing of Valerie Plame. Now, going back to Michael Ledeen, this right after 9/11, one of the things about this cabal is we know it's bipartisan, we know it's transnational, and indeed this involved Italy, the Niger, and other countries, and members of Bush 41's Iran-Contra operative, Ledeen Gorbanifour. Gorbanifour is or was an Iranian arms dealer with heavy ties to the Mossad who facilitated Iran-Contra. And Berlusconi Panorama magazine, which passed the forged documents to the U.S. press. We go back to a well-publicized and very troubling meeting that was held in late 2001 between Ledeen Gorbanifour, Larry Franklin, and Harold Rhodes. These are people who are extremely high up in what we call the neocon thread of the cabal. And Ledeen, for instance, is of the American Enterprise Institute, which hosts another number of names. I believe Stephen Hadley, who was a national security advisor at that point, was there, and there are links to Deputy Secretary of State Richard Armitage. We're talking about a sterling cast of characters who are sitting down together in Italy talking about the documents, which we now know are forged. And we also have a good suspicion of who forged them and what the person we think was supposedly committed suicide in Italy earlier this year. And this brings us to back to the same cast of characters that are affiliated with the American Enterprise Institute, which this year just reconvened something called the Committee on the Present Danger. And I refer to that as a neocon love fest with the usual suspects. And the day I met there was a day I got hit by a car in Herndon, Virginia. So, I mean, I will put that down to coincidence right now, but it really didn't do anything in other words, it's very hard for me to think that was coincidental.
Right, sure.
Now, I believe that the purpose, at that point, they were negotiating the next step to get us into Iraq and Iran. And why would they want to do that? You know, when we step back and take a look at the significance of destroying a global WMD search team to getting us into a war in the Middle East, what really are they up to? Is it just about oil? And the answer is, as we know, no.
Yeah.
One of when PTAC first fell in my lap, I spoke to some of the top experts in the world on terrorism financing. And one of them, Loretta Napoleoni, everyone has their idea on it, but when you rationalize all these threads and ideas, it is clear that what we're being ushered into is nothing less than the age of terror. What that means is what is being globalized is the economy of terror, where every aspect of our economy, our daily lives, are mandated by by a blueprint of terror.
So it affects us all the way down to the consumer level, of course.
All the way down to the consumer level, and you will see this reflected by the RFID chips, by the Patriot Act 2 and 3 and 4 that are coming, and so on and so forth. Your every step will fall in a world that is controlled and monitored by extreme terror that has been engineered and set up by basically the Bush crime family, the cabal of 50 to 100, 200 top people, however you want to,
Right.
And, they're foot soldiers. I see Patrick Fitzgerald, for instance, very in much the same way I see John Kerry when he investigated, and the other investigators of the big crimes in our nation's past, which Iran, Contra, and BCCI. These were all vehicles and venues that enable us to move to this point 20, 30, 40 years later.
Yeah.
First, he's a foot soldier for them, and he reminds me of John Kerry because John Kerry, who is supposed to be a hero in the BCCI investigation, he prosecuted, these things. He made sure that certain things were exposed, but certain things weren't.
Okay.
And
Indira, hold that thought right there. We got to take this break, and
sure.
When we come back, I want to pick up on that thread. Okay?
Yes.
Indira Singh is my guest, and we're going to not take calls at the moment, but later on in the program, we will open the lines to your calls, because I'm sure a lot of people will have some questions. Of course, this is a very, very big story. We'll be right back after the break. I'm Michael Corbin, and you're listening to A Closer Look. And she is an incredibly courageous whistleblower because, again, this woman has done an investigation, a blue ribbon investigation into the threads that run throughout the 9/11 tragedy that occurred in New York on September the 11th, 2001. And what you're hearing, again, folks, is exclusive material of her investigation, and it goes into some incredible places. Indira, welcome back.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, let's jump back into where we were before we took the break.
Yeah, we were speaking of Plaingate, the significance of that, and really the bottom line, we come across the usual suspects that feature high in the Bush crime family cabal, and which, as we say, is bipartisan and transnational. And the significance of that is that American heroes were killed by that outing, the outing by someone like a Jeff Gannon and funded by Bobby Eberle's GOP USA working for Karl Rove in the White House, who just, I understand, got a free pass today.
By the way, Jeff Gannon listens to this program.
Well, he should.
Yeah.
And let's see if he can, if he has the brain cycles to understand these connections and their significance. Anyway, they destroyed a global WMD search team. Operatives were killed in the process of doing work against this terror cabal, and it was worldwide, from Pakistan, different countries, and so on. And it really upset a lot of people within the CIA, and a lot of them started coming out, speaking, helping, giving information that would help investigations such as mine. And so that's the significance of that today. And, of course, then we focus on Patrick Fitzgerald. And in my book, he's just another John Kerry. I guess they're grooming the next generation because he's a part of a breed of – he's a special prosecutor, not an independent counsel, so he's not required to give a report on what he discovered. But he has the inside players and cast of characters and knows just how far to go so as not to upset the cabal. And that's exactly what he did, and I've been watching him since 2002, 2003 for giving Inam Arnott of Benevolence International Foundation a free pass, because Inam Arnott was the one ace in the hole they had that could connect, could bring this entire thing down. And of course, he's connected with the Muslim Brotherhood in Chicago and Boston, and through that, directly to the members of PTEC and the 4 or 5 money laundering and smuggling companies that were affiliated with it.
Okay.
And with that, we should get into the core of what we have now. I've spoken on this program before about about whistleblowing on PTEC, which, oh, by the way, has changed their name, as all these companies that work with the cabal eventually do, and they're in focus. As you know, a number of names were affiliated with PTEC, and I've always said that if PTEC is the one place that you look, if you know what you're doing, the entire cast of characters will be revealed. And we do have a transnational bipartisan cast of characters. I've spoken in the past about the Saudis that were involved with it. The Saudi bin Laden group was heavily involved. There were 4 bin Ladens involved with PTEC. And we all know the bin Laden group has very deep pocket ties to the Carlyle group, to Bechtel, to Halliburton, and so on and so forth. And we have Khalid bin Mahfouz, who is Osama's brother-in-law, despite his suing 28 authors. And he is a current business partner of former New Jersey Governor Thomas Kean, who the very person George Bush appointed to chair the investigation of the September 11th Terrorist Act. But what's really interesting about Governor Kean, as we've mentioned in this program before, is that he was doing business with people involved with PTEC.
Right.
And, some of the other Saudis involved with PTEC was Mohammed Alamoudi, an investor convicted for terror financing, small convictions. Yaqub Mirza, who is subject of a massive Treasury investigation, Operation Green Quest, that was stymied at every step. We have other people involved with Namira Petroleum investing in PTEC, which goes back to bin Mahfouz, and of course their boy Yassin Al-Qadi, a Saudi sheikh, who is a member of the Saudi royal family. And he was the one that Bush's administration put on the terror list after 9/11. And someone asked me a good question: why Yassin Qadi, if he was such a buddy of George Bush, and why not someone like Khalid bin Mahfouz? And my answer after investigating is basically he was the only one they could put on there, the only token offering they could put on there, since he was a foot soldier of the Saudis, that could wear the trail to Bush and others, and Cheney and the whole cabal could be managed quite nicely. Now, the significance of PTEC has, every time that I've brought up the issue of it's about the people behind PTEC, not necessarily the software. The focus, including the Secret Service and Rescue Service, the focus also wanted to place on it was always that it was Promise version 2. And I'm sure your listeners all know what Promise software was about and what happened to Danny Casolaro, who was investigating Promise, and he had discovered something called the octopus. Well, hold that thought, because we're going to come back to the layer of the octopus that comes all the way back to this.
Okay.
Now, all of these people mentioned here have very, very close ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. And we've spoken on this program before about what is a Muslim Brotherhood, and I want to make it very clear now that they may be Muslims, but they're not Muslims in the sense that millions and millions of good people are Muslims, just as millions of Christians are good Christians. They're not Muslims. They use Muslims, and they use the Islamic religion to perpetrate their terrorist acts. Muslim Brotherhood goes all the way back to World War II and Hitler and elements in the United States that banded with them. They're the ones, a Saudi Egyptian group that helped Hitler fund the concentration camps, for example. So people should really understand who they are. They're terrorists. That transnational bipartisan terrorist has been going on for that long. So having said that, let's move on to the Muslim Brotherhood and 9/11. All these characters within PTEC were members of the Muslim Brotherhood, including Inam Arnott. But one of the things that I've never talked about openly about what was actually going on behind PTEC takes us right to George Bush.